Hello and welcome to my video. So in this video I will be talking about my first wood firing. So if you don't know what wood firing is, basically it's a different method of firing clay, which is using wood as a source of fuel instead of like an electric kiln or as a gas kiln would use like propane. So as you can see here, these are the pieces that I had put in. This firing was very last minute because I didn't really have too much time before the firing. So I'm doing what's called firing green. So I had to fire my pieces that were not bisqued, which is possible to do inside a wood kiln. You just have to be careful because when you're firing green, you have to do a preheat to make sure the pieces are completely dry and that there's no moisture out of them. And as you can see here, I glazed the pieces that I had made. I just made like a few bowls, a teapot, a vase. And as you can see here, this is wads. So wads are used to prop up your pieces from the bottom of the kiln, like from the kiln shelves. And you can see that I had used the wadding balls, these wad balls, and I stuck them and I glued them to the bottom of my pieces. And this inside of a wood kiln allows the glaze not to drip. I think it does also help with wood ash, which is part of the wood firing experience. And wood ash comes from the wood burning and hitting the pieces and adding a lot of texture, which you'll see the result is pretty interesting later. And this is the kiln packed. So we packed this really tight with a bunch of, like I think it was around 600 pots or something crazy amount. And I only had 7 pieces to put in because, like I said, it was pretty last minute. But I'm happy with that I got to participate in this firing because it was last minute, like I said. And this is the kiln when it's firing. So we closed the top, which is like full of insulation, and we did end up packing more into the kiln because the whole middle of the kiln was empty. And at this stage we're doing a preheat to the kiln. So we're using some propane just to preheat the kiln. And then it was time for my kiln shift, which was absurdly early in the morning. It was a 4 a.m. shift, and I had to work to 8 a.m. So 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. 4-hour shift. And this is super early in the morning. We're just heating it up to, I believe, around 1800. We're ramping it up to 1800 degrees. And we're using sliders, which is what the front doors are called. And we're just putting and chucking in a bunch of wood into the sliders to heat up the kiln to the temperature that we want. And this is like really glowing, really bright fire. This giant fire inside of this kiln. It's just like this giant firebox, and then the heat moves back. And so you'll see later that the pottery, the closest to the fire, gets totally different interesting results than the parts in the back of the kiln. And for this type of kiln firing, you need a bunch of fuel source. So we have a bunch of wood, and it's a lot of work to cut and stack all of the wood, which I have to do. But I think it's totally worth it for the interesting results. You'll never get the results from a wood kiln like you would inside of an electric kiln. And also, it's a cool experience to be a part of. It's a 24-hour kiln firing. It's like a crazy amount of work. And as you can see here, flames were just bellowing out, but then we mudded up the kiln because we're doing a cool down reduction. So we ramped it up to, I believe, 2500 degrees, and then we mudded up the kiln, which mudding is, it's just like kind of like clay, but you mix it with newspaper. You use the mudding and you seal every opening in the kiln, and this causes a cool down reduction phase, like a reduction to, there's no more oxygen able to get into the kiln now. And so as you can see here, this is my second kiln shift. I am stoking the kiln. I'm side stoking. So at this stage, all the oxygen is completely out of it. We're trying to get all the oxygen out, but still fuel and slowly cool down the kiln. So I'm just slowly stoking the fire to the kiln and with small little tiny pieces of wood. This took a while. I think the shift was around 5 hours, and my only job was to make sure that this little tiny flame at the top of the kiln, which you'll see in just a second, is still flaming, or is still a flame. This just allows us to know that the fire is still going and we're still heating up the kiln, because we don't want to just crash cool the kiln. We wanted to reduce it with by just keep adding some fuel. So I had this giant stack of wood next to me, and then I had pallets and pallets of wood next to me on my right, which I had to stack and sort through. And I just wanted to make sure that this flame right here was still going, and this was a reduction firing. This is the reduction part of the firing. And then the firing was all done. So these were the very interesting results. You'll never see, like I said, you'll never see these inside of this kind of result from an electric kiln. So it was a really cool experience to be a part of. And you can see the wood ash, and you can see everything back here. One vase did fall down on the right. You can see there in the back of the kiln, or in the front of the kiln where the firebox is, I mean, please. And then these are all the pieces. There were so many, so I didn't really get to record all of them. And unloading it was really cool though, because you could see everyone's piles of stuff. Everyone had a bunch of pieces. I will be participating in the next wood firing, which I'll hopefully have more pieces to put in, because right now I only had 7, but I've never done a wood firing before, and this was my first one. And then the kiln was completely empty, and that obviously made a huge mess, so we had to end up cleaning it all up and vacuum out the kiln and prepare it for the next firing. And these are the pieces that I had got out of the wood kiln. So this teapot I was really happy with. You can see that dripping right there. I didn't add any glaze to this teapot. This was all the wood firing just to the teapot. So this was a completely bone dry piece that was just goes into the kiln, and I was using Sheffield woodlight, I believe, for the clay body. And the woodlight is a spotted speckled clay, so that's why it's giving this interesting results. And also the wood ash and the kiln atmosphere is just hitting the piece in a way that makes it very interesting. These bowls right here, I did add some Shinos to. I believe I labeled the Shinos. Yeah, this Shino was very consistent. It didn't have any inconsistencies. But the other Shinos, like this Shino here on this mug, on the inside I did get some bubbling, which you can see. But I was really happy with the color that came out. And this mug actually is funny because I didn't give it a chance of survival. I was going to survive. It was very gnarly. It's because you can expect to lose some pieces inside the wood kiln, and I did experience some cracking and stuff. I tried to save it, but it didn't really work. But yeah, it's just a learning experience, and I expected to lose a few pieces just because I've never done this before. It was a great new fun experience, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.